Welcome to the Dog Nation post-game show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Stop by the UGA Bookstore for all your game day apparel. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
You have to against a defense like that because
Hello, everybody. Welcome into our Dog Nation post-game show presented by the UGA Bookstore. I am live on the field here in frigid Lexington, Kentucky, Kroger Field Commonwealth Stadium, where Georgia has gotten a 16-6 win tonight over the Kentucky Wildcats. Happy to be joined by former Georgia wide receiver, the great analyst Terrence Edwards here as well. And I think for me, first off on tonight's game, and I mentioned this on Twitter, and I talked about this a lot, throughout the week here at Dog Nation, on Dog Nation Daily in particular. I didn't have a great feeling about this game. I thought this was kind of a weird, tricky spot for Georgia. I don't know that Georgia had a lot to play for here today, and I'm not making excuses for the performance. I'm really not. I'm trying to explain why there was a little bit of anxiety for me going into this game. Thought it was an odd place to be. Certainly the cold weather was going to be an impact on all of that, and frankly, it probably ended up being even worse than I expected it to be. Georgia escapes here with an ugly win. I don't know that anybody will account this among their favorite Georgia games of all time. I'm not even quite so sure how many great highlights there were from this. Obviously, there were guys who had a good day. The Georgia running game, for the most part, with the exception of some short yardage situations, was really a pretty valuable asset for UGA. Once again, defensively, Georgia holding an SEC opponent to fewer than 10 points. That is certainly a big statement. Georgia obviously helping its average, second nationally when it comes to allowing just about 11 points per game, and another good step taken in that direction. But beyond that, this was a little bit of a mess today, and Georgia probably had to escape with a win in a game that many thought it might, win much more comfortably than this. So I am sort of just glad it's over, and obviously there are bigger games yet to come for Georgia where the situation you would imagine is going to be a good bit different, as the lights have really kind of come down here already. Boy, they get serious around here. They turn these lights off pretty quickly after this game. But the point is, not a great day for Georgia. Certainly, glad to escape with a win, but escape is probably the operative word there on that. So with that in mind, I'll bring in Terrence Edwards here, the former Georgia wide receiver. Terrence, you had a vantage point on this game from certainly more comfortable confines than where I was here today. What did you think of what you saw here as Georgia kind of had to fight and scratch and claw to get this win against the Wildcats here today?
First off, B, I want to say I think I need to talk to your bosses and let them know that you need a raise, because there's no way I could do the show from Lexington, Kentucky tonight being 26 degrees or whatever it is right now. So I applaud you for being able to do the show and be in this weather that it is today. And with that, Matt, tonight I don't think, the biggest glaring thing to me was our short yardage goal line situation. We were very poor. I think, as great as Coach Monken has been, I don't think his goal line short yardage play calling tonight was up to his standards. We shouldn't be getting stopped that frequently in the red zone or short yardage. I think running the zone instead of the power probably been a better call, because they never stopped us when we ran zone. Kenny McIntosh and the crew really was able to find the cutback lanes. Even on Kenny McIntosh's touchdown, that was part of zone with a cutback going back to the left. So I thought those would probably been better plays in the short yardage goal line. And you may have seen it, but I can't remember us even running a quarterback sneak this year. And that didn't work. So we tried a lot of things. So that's one of my takeaways, where we could get back to work and get ready for Tech and really work on our short yardage goal line, because in the playoffs, in the SEC championship game, that may come back to bite us if we cannot score touchdowns.
That are not former players, and those of us that haven't been on the field like this, Talk to me a little bit about what makes it different there, because we obviously saw Georgia with its ground attack. Certainly this was a day in which the passing attack had a really hard time getting anything going, and I think a lot of that was probably because of the wind that was present here in Commonwealth Stadium, still kind of whipping around and blowing right now. I think a lot of the inability to throw the football was probably related today to the fact that the wind was just wreaking havoc on so many different things. But so Georgia had to lean more on its rushing attack today. So why is it, do you think, that when Georgia's kind of middle of the field, kind of moving towards the red zone, it seemed to be getting whatever it wanted? And yet once you kind of got down there in those short yardage, red zone, goal-to-go type situations, including the fourth and goal situation, Georgia wasn't able to do the same thing. What changes as this rushing attack gets closer to the goal line in your mind?
In football, the field shrinks. You don't have but so many yards to go. The end zone is only 10 yards, so defenders know they don't have to cover for a long amount of time, and you can play 10 on 11 football with the quarterback now being attached to the running game. So get to Kentucky credit. They did a great job of stuffing our inside run. That probably wasn't the best calls tonight. I think more of the outside zones probably were more of the better calls. And, once we put Jalen Carley in, we know we're probably going to run more of the power game that's inside, and it just wasn't there tonight. After the first two calls that we got to stop, I would like to see more of the outside zone, and we didn't get any push from the offensive standpoint, and Kentucky did a great job of stopping that. But I think as well as Coach Monken have done a great job this season, I think today was not one of his better days in the short yardage goal line.
Yeah, it could be fair to say. So we're going to take your phone calls here, Zoom calls. So whichever video chat you're watching, Facebook or YouTube or at dognation.com, we have a link for you to be a part of the show, and you can share your thoughts on what is a Georgia win, completing the regular season, undefeated in SEC play, regular season finale coming up on Saturday, but certainly not today, probably playing at a championship level, and I believe all of these UGA coaches and players would probably acknowledge that there as well. So first up, our good friend Ryan Walker, always glad to have his commentary here on the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Ryan, thanks for taking time to join us. What did you think about UGA here tonight?
First off, good evening, Terrence. Good evening, BA. Stay warm, BA. I'm up here in Philly. It's in the 20s right now, so I feel your pain. We got the heat on in the house, but it ain't working. But let's just get right to it. Offensively on the line, we just got manhandled in the second half. You got to give your hats off to Kentucky because they came to play. We apparently came in there lackadaisical, thinking that we were just going to roll over them. We definitely got no push on 3rd and 1. This is one of the best offensive lines, and we're scheduled to be a team that has the Outland Trophy. We didn't see that today. Let's just be honest. Even though Stetson didn't get really pressured today, we got no push. Jackpot was phenomenal today. Those 3 field goals, defense held up, and you got to give your credit to Kenny McIntosh. He found his way with over 150 yards today, 1 touchdown. It was tough sledding all the way around. Today would have been a great day, but we got to celebrate something. The Gators got beat by Vandy today in Vandy. Then the Dogs win the SEC East 3 years in a row. Excuse me on that. Go undefeated 2 years in a row. That's only been done 3 times by Florida and Alabama, and we joined that class. So now we're in a position where we got to go back to the drawing board, do what we need to do, get back to running the football, manhandling people next week against Georgia Tech, and let's just get this passing game going too, because we need Bennett for this championship run, man. But I'll take the win tonight, but it's better to be lucky than good sometimes. Thanks, fellas.
Ryan, great call. I appreciate that. And Terrence, one of the things that Ryan brings up that I think is really important here is the role that Jackpot Leslie played in this game tonight. I can think of 2 instances on the Kentucky side. You go back and look at the early decision on the opening drive of the game for Kentucky to go for it on 4th down as opposed to trying to kick a field goal there. I think that was related to the fact that they were kicking into what was the wind, and the wind was kind of doing one of those swirling things today. If you're in the stadium and if you're leaving Lexington, you're joining the show, you'll acknowledge this there as well, that the ribbons that hang at the top of the goal line here, or I should say the goalposts that kind of give us an indication of how the wind's blowing. They weren't necessarily always blowing in one direction or the other. There was a little bit of a swirling wind here, and I believe that caused Mark Stoops not to want to try a field goal on the first Kentucky drive today, and obviously their kicker also missed his final field goal attempt tonight there as well. So clearly kicking was going to be a big issue there, and Podlesny tonight gave Georgia 3 big field goals. Now, you don't want to settle for field goals, but tonight was a night in the cold where points were at a premium, and Podlesny gave you 9 big points right there. So, Terrence, I think in the midst of all of this, his performance does need to be acknowledged, that Georgia really needed all 9 of the points that he gave them tonight.
Most definitely. I tweeted out during the game that I thought Stetson was having a hard time adjusting to the wind. It looked like he was trying to guide the ball through the wind instead of throwing the football in. I tweeted that. Then someone tweeted it back at me and asked me then why Podlesny is having a great kicking day. And I have no idea why, he was able to have a great day. So you got to give it up to him. I think he was definitely the player of the game today with those 3 big field goals. And the first one with the bad snap, he was able to kick that through and hold off because Stetson had to get the ball up on the ground, off the ground. So that was a big kick. So, I think today he was probably the star of the game with those big 9 points. Former dog in the house.
What's going on?
How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Yeah, Frank, let's bring in Frank Watt. Yeah, Frank, you're on the program. Frank, welcome into the Dog Nation Postgame Show presented by the UGA Bookstore. How are you?
Good. How you doing this evening?
Doing great.
How do the
You want to talk?
There you go. I like that.
Let's talk.
What do y'all think about these dogs tonight?
Hey, I thought the Dogs did well tonight. I mean, it was a tough game under tough conditions tonight. We could have played a little better on offense, but overall, I thought the Dogs looked great tonight. Defense looked fantastic. We gave up a few big plays towards the end of the game, but overall, I thought we played well in very bad weather conditions.
Yeah, Frank, thanks for the phone call, and I appreciate that. And Terrence, that's the one thing you got to keep going back to here is the weather tonight was a huge factor on the interception that Bennett had, and you're not going to take this away. I mean, it was still an interception. You can't have that. Another turnover tonight that could have proven costly for UGA, but clearly that was Bennett throwing directly into the wind. And being here in the stadium, you can almost see the movement of the football as it almost traveled from like one hash mark all the way to the other in terms of being impacted by the wind there. And I'll be curious to hear exactly how much Kirby Smart acknowledges the weather playing a factor in tonight's game. But clearly this was a different kind of football game than any of the other football games that Georgia's played this year. And obviously last week it was cold in Starkville, cold enough that it was uncomfortable to sit out there, but it wasn't nearly as windy in Starkville last week as it was tonight. And I think it's the wind in particular. And Terrence, quarterbacks, obviously you were a high school quarterback, and I think the one thing the quarterbacks pretty consistently say is that people make a big deal about rain sometimes, but most quarterbacks that I've heard, and maybe you would say the same thing yourself, it's far easier to throw a wet football than it is to throw a football through the wind. And I think that's tonight why you didn't see a bunch of offense really on either side tonight.
Oh, most definitely. You see a former defensive dog. Those guys love these type of games. But as an offensive guy, these are games that we don't like because the wind changed the trajectory of the ball when the ball is coming your way. So, I mean, you can see that on the pass to Ladd. I don't understand why he threw that ball because we had the check down open and we were seizing control of the game. The first drive out of the locker room. So that throw didn't make sense to me. And it seems like Kirby put a rein on that. Like, we're going to run this ball and play great defense tonight. And
yeah.
I think that was the recipe for our victory tonight, along with our kicking game, is we're going to be able to run the ball because of the wind conditions. And for a receiver, like you said, I could take rain, I could take cold, but don't give me all three. Just give me one. And wind is definitely one that I don't like because of the way the ball moves and you can't get a real beat on the ball in the air.
Want to go back to the phones here in a moment. Before that, though, let me remind you, this is the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Don't forget, next week, the regular season finale back in Athens. Well, that means we'll be back at the UGA Bookstore next Saturday as well, and also a great autograph signing prior to the game there as well. How about next Saturday from 9:30 in the morning until 11:30? Buck Ballou there signing copies of his book, or Rodrigo Hot Rod Blankenship. He'll be back in the building there as well. Malcolm Mitchell, he'll be on hand signing copies of his brand new book. And, of course, the Pro Football Hall of Famer Richard Seymour going to be there as well. That's from 9:30 until 11:30 a.m. next Saturday prior to the kickoff against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Clean, old-fashioned hay at Sanford Stadium for the first time in a long time. And before the game, the UGA Bookstore going to be the place to be with all of that. JC, we're glad to have you here on the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. You're next up here. JC, how about them Dogs? How'd you feel about a win tonight that's probably a little closer than it should have been?
That's right, BA. How you doing, Terrence? BA? How about them Dogs going for 2-22? I
like it.
The game was kind of ugly tonight, but we got the win. And like Terrence said, it was cold. I get it, but yeah, we got to play better to do better. So hopefully, going into the Georgia Tech game next week, we get things back online, get ready for the SEC championship.
JC, great call, and I love your sentiments that you expressed there. And I guess, Terrence, to kind of piggyback on what JC was saying, look, here's the thing for me, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat what tonight was. It was not very good. But at the same time, it doesn't really change my overall opinion about what Georgia is. I believe had this game been played in like the climate-controlled conditions of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where Georgia's SEC championship game and potentially its college football playoff semifinal game, if it's able to qualify for the playoff, both those games could take place indoors. National championship will be in Los Angeles. The other playoff semifinal game, Arizona. Weather won't be a factor there. I'm not blaming everything that happened tonight on the weather, but this is Georgia kind of playing out the string. Georgia's really the only team in the country that's kind of playing out the string at this level right now. You can't really make this comparison for anybody else. Nobody else nationally is really kind of playing the kind of game that Georgia is tonight. That's not to excuse it. The night wasn't very good, but ultimately I don't know that this is evidence of really anything one way or another about Georgia. To me, this was a box that had to be checked. Now you move on. It wasn't pretty. You kind of burned the film. You burned the tape maybe. But in terms of changing my mind, less confident, as JC says, about Georgia's ability to go for 2-22, I don't think it really alters anything for me in that regard.
Oh, me either. If you play long enough, you're going to have these type games. It was cold. It was windy. There was a lot of elements that contribute to the way we played tonight. But at the end of the day, it's all about winning. We are undefeated right now, still going to be ranked number one. I think every team now in the top four is somewhat struggling tonight as well. I won't even say struggling, but having close games. So it's not an indicator on what, our ability to go back to back. Each game is different. You got to take each game as a different season because I think, with Tech next week, we all understand what that rivalry means. I think those guys are going to go and try to go through an undefeated four-year class against Tech. So I think we'll see a better effort next week. And I think the elements is going to be better. And then we just get prepared for the SEC championship game where there's going to be no elements involved. So I think these next 2 weeks is going to kind of determine where our mindset is. And I think Kirby and company is going to have them in a mindset of playing physical, playing hard, and playing strong.
So I want to ask you this question before we go back out to the phones. One of the, I guess, most talked about moments from today's game, to begin the fourth quarter, Georgia choose to go for it on that fourth and goal situation there and get stuffed. But leading 16-0 right now, there was a sentiment among some Georgia fans is that's a field goal you should kick. You get a chance to go up 19-0. The way that it's been described is, hey, that turns what would theoretically be a two-possession game because 2 touchdowns, two-point conversions into a 3-possession game by going up 19. Terrence, I'm curious of your opinion on that. Do you think that Georgia maybe made the wrong decision? Kirby Smart, the head coach, maybe made the wrong decision there, choosing not to go up 19-0 there at that spot? Because certainly on social media and really here in the stadium, there was a lot of discussion about that, about the decision to go on fourth down there as opposed to kick the field goal and turning that into a 19-point lead.
I think if we've been scoring points and kind of dominate, especially in a short yardage game, I think Kirby is trying to send a message. 4th and 1, I believe in you. And if we don't get it, I believe in the defense. And the way the vibe of the game went, I agree with Kirby going for it. You got to instill confidence in your guys sometimes. Like, we haven't blocked well. We're going to go for it, and I believe you're going to get it. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Everything is hindsight 2020. If we'd have got it, it wouldn't have really been a lot of chatter about it. I think it's chatter because we didn't get it. I wish Kirby would go for it every time in that situation because I just believe we're the better team, have the better players. So I don't have any issue with him going for it, but I do understand if we kick the field goal that we up 3 scores. But I also got to know the vibe of the game, and the vibe of the game from his standpoint is we didn't block very well in the short yardage game, and he was just trying to give those guys another opportunity on 4th and 1 to build confidence and build confidence in the whole team. So I don't mind him going for it at all.
Yeah, I agree with your point about, listen, you got to be one thing or the other, consistent with your line of thought, and I prefer aggressive as opposed to not, especially when you think you have the better team. James is next up here in the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. James, how about them Dogs? What do you think about this game tonight? Go ahead, James.
Well, I think it was a tough game. I think sometimes a tough game is necessary, and I think the way Monken called this game, we were thinking ahead somewhat and not wanting to show too much for future games. And I think sometimes a tough game is just what the doctor ordered. And you got to keep the players' attention, keep them hungry. And of course, I would have liked to have blown out of this game. Several things in this game I did not like. I think this tough game is going to bode well for us going forward.
Well, James, I appreciate that call, and certainly that'd be good news for Georgia fans if that's the case, something to build on here towards having the kind of success, enjoying the kind of season you want to have. And, Terrence, that's another person kind of mentioning something you talked about a little earlier when it comes to the decision, the play calling tonight by Todd Monken, that especially when it comes to some of those running plays, kind of straight up the middle, some Georgia fans thought that got a little bit predictable there. How much of that do you think was taken away by the fact that Georgia just didn't trust his passing game tonight, that in a situation like this, that with cold weather, wind, all of that being a factor, they just didn't really feel comfortable throwing the ball? And how much of this, as maybe James suggested, Georgia didn't need to open up the playbook too much, knowing that it's got far bigger and more important games than this to come in future weeks. Do you put much stock in either one of those things potentially being true?
I just, for us, the play calling wise, I do. I don't think we was very confident in throwing the football tonight in the element. So we decided that we're going to run the football, and we did run the football very well from the 20 to the 20. But once we got inside the red zone or short yardage, we didn't do a very good job. And like I said, I think the better runs tonight, and it's always hindsight is always 20. We're outside looking in. I just thought the better play calls would have been more of an outside zone more than a power game. I don't think they stopped us very much in the outside zone. It's the same play that McIntosh scored on. So I guess once we got jumbled up and went to the big personnel, Kentucky did a great job of stopping us. So, it's a lesson learned. Go back and look at the film. At the objective of the day is to win the game, and that's what we did.
Georgia Bulldogs 05 joins us here on the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. How are you? Thanks for being a part of the show. And how about them Dogs? What'd you think about tonight?
I think we played really well, BA. I'm very happy that Keely Ringo got another pick. I would like us to play better in the red zone, but as far as the game goes, it went well. We're still 11-0, and I expect us to be number one still on Tuesday night. Go Dogs.
And no doubt that is the most important. Yeah, go Dogs. No doubt. That is the most important thing right now. Georgia is number one, and the mission of go for 2 in 22 is still very much on right now. And, Terrence, how about that interception for Keely Ringo tonight? One of the many big defensive plays that were made. And really, I think you have to give this defense a lot of credit. You know, that was a drive that Kentucky looked like it might be on its way to getting something. And Will Levis instead provides his 10th interception of the season. So that continues to be a little bit of an issue for him. But Ringo, who has such a penchant for making big plays at big times, will obviously all remember the national championship game. He had a very big interception in a game against Tennessee earlier this year, and then coming back right there at a time in which it seemed like Kentucky was on its way to establishing some momentum, and the Ringo interception looms large right there. How big was that Keely pick in your mind?
That was very big. I think once everyone on Twitter wants to hate Keely, then he makes a big play. I think every time you check Twitter because he gave up a big pass to Brown tonight, then he comes back and make a great play like that just to take points off the board because they were in the red zone. And if he, doesn't pick that, they'll possibly get 3 points. So that was a big swing. That was a 4-point swing when you take away the 3. We could have had. So, Keelan's a very talented young man. The ball is in the air. He has the propensity to make big plays, but then he's also able to give up big plays. So, I love his game. I love the young man. I love everything about him. Now we just got to be able to be just more consistent on the outside with him. He'll give up a big play, then he'll make a tremendous play. Just more consistency from him I would like to see.
Let's see, Randy from Tifton. You're next up here on the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Randy, how about them Dogs? How'd you feel about this 16-6 win over Kentucky here tonight?
Hey, BA, how you doing? I tell you what,
I'm
a
great.
win's a win, and everybody, they're going to complain, about this and that. But in the SEC, if you can win on the road, that's hard to do, and we done it today. If you want to nitpick, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have run up the middle so much. Try to get outside some, and then maybe the defensive backs can turn their head around a little bit. I don't know how they got them long passes. It's like the ball was just floating up there forever, and our defensive backs didn't make a play on the ball. But I don't know how bad the win was and this and that. But I'll take the win because all the teams struggled today so far. So I'm happy with the win, and go Dogs.
Randy, it's a great point, and I appreciate you sharing what you shared in that you look at a lot of big teams here today. Once again, Michigan in a hard-fought game against Illinois. A game was really lucky to win. Probably got the benefit of a pretty questionable call on a 4th down play that allowed the Wolverines to get that win. At last check, Ohio State was in a bit of a battle with Maryland. The Buckeyes were losing for a while on the road. They were winning the last time I saw it. I don't know what the score is right now. We'll look at it before the show's done here today. Obviously Florida, as somebody pointed out earlier, lost to Vanderbilt. That's not really certainly a big team in 2022 necessarily. But I think the point here is that Georgia has earned its right to be playing in a situation right now where you're not really having to evaluate them on a game-by-game basis. Georgia doesn't have anything to prove here at the moment. Georgia has proven that over the course of the first 10 games of this season, dominating against Tennessee, winning a ranked matchup to begin the season against Oregon, marching through the rest of the schedule unbeaten, in addition to all of that. And obviously if you're a Georgia fan, maybe you'd like to have seen more from your team here tonight, but this isn't really much of a point of evaluation for UGA. Georgia really has nothing to prove here in these final 2 regular season games. To me, it's a box to be checked and then to move on to the games that do matter the most once you move on to the month of December. It sounds like maybe you're making excuses for the performance. I'm simply saying that I'm not sure this performance really matters all that much in the grand scheme of things. And for Georgia, it's earned the right to get itself ready for the games that matter. There are other teams that are still fighting here down the stretch. Georgia right now, not one of those teams. Terrence, do you see it the same way?
Most definitely. I think that in the grand scheme of things, it's about winning and moving on. Sometimes they're pretty, sometimes they're ugly, but a win is a win. And a win-loss column is not going to say pretty or ugly. It's going to say victory. So we attained the objective, and the objective was to win the game, stay undefeated. Like Ryan said earlier, this group joins an elite class of going undefeated the past 2 years. Only 2 other schools have done it. Now this team has now put their name in the same lights of the Alabamas and the Floridas. So we accomplished a lot tonight. This team has accomplished a lot this season. So it's not woe is me. The guys are going to get back to work on Monday, watch this film, see the things that are correctable, and get ready for the next opponent.
Let's check in with a different Randy now. He joins us here on the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Randy, thanks for your time. How about them Dogs? How'd you feel? 16-6 tonight. Georgia beats Kentucky.
Well, BA, here it is again. Go for 2 in 22. Again, today's victory is getting us closer towards that goal. So that's what we need to think about. Again, Dog Nation as perfectionists, we'd like to see more sacks. We'd like to see better production on red zone, better production on 4th and 1. But the end result is the best thing. We came away with a victory, and we'll do it again and again and again.
Boy, Randy, I think you're absolutely right about that. That if the worst it ever gets is coming on the road to Commonwealth Stadium here at Kroger Field and walking away with a 10-point win, if that's as much bad football as Georgia fans have to suffer through, or if that's as close as it comes to being bad football, then as a UGA fan, you're in a pretty good spot there on that. And you know, Terrence, as much as we're able to, I do think it's appropriate to kind of process that the right way. Of course, we're thinking about go for 2 in 22 and what Georgia's chances are of repeating as national champions. That is a real possibility, and Georgia's on the doorstep of getting a chance to go out there and find out if it's capable of doing that. So, of course, you're going to be in anticipation of the big games that Georgia's going to be playing. And yet at the same time, and you were mentioning the stats a moment ago about running through the SEC slate completely undefeated throughout the regular season here once again, that I think it's also important to kind of give proper appreciation here for just how special it is to be a UGA fan. And I'll tell you this, Terrence, it was amazing to see this prior to the game. I can't tell you how cold it is. You know, I can't tell you how many Georgia fans were already gathered right outside the gate here at Commonwealth Stadium at Kroger Field to see Georgia come in here. The entire area almost, you know, behind me here, so full of Georgia fans during the game today there as well. So this is clearly a fan base right now that it's enjoying this team, enjoying cheering for this team. And even if this win wasn't quite as pretty as it could be, there is still a lot to like about UGA.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, just like we've been talking about throughout this segment, man, this team has put their stuff in an elite company. We all know what those 95, 96 Gators represented. We always know what those Alabama teams represented. So now once they look at this stat again, the 22 Bulldogs are going to be in this stat as well. That only 3 teams have went through a SEC schedule 2 consecutive years undefeated. And I don't care how much we talk about our struggles tonight, they won the game, and they still part of only 3 teams that have had opportunity to go undefeated for 2 consecutive years. So that's a great accomplishment. And like I said, I was blessed to play in the SEC, and we know how hard it is to go on the road in these conditions and still win. So that in the grand scheme of things, they achieved their goal. We didn't play our best, no, but if our best wasn't good enough and we still won this game, then we all should be satisfied. Let's get ready for our next opponent. We came out really healthy with no big injuries, and that's another big key to this victory tonight, coming out injury-free.
If you're watching one of our video comment sections, obviously on Facebook or YouTube or dognation.com, there's a link for you to click into and be a part of the show. It'll connect you to us via Zoom, and you can share your thoughts with us live here on Georgia's win over Kentucky tonight on our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. By the way, don't forget, this upcoming Saturday we'll be back at the UGA Bookstore, but you can be at the UGA Bookstore anytime, whether it be in person there, right where the dog shop, right next to the Tate Student Center, across from Sanford Stadium, or anytime at UGABookstore.com. Great place to get you stocked up for all your Christmas shopping needs. Boy, best looking football gear you're going to find, whether it be the Peter Millar, the Nike coaches gear. You want some warm weather stuff for a night like this, they've got you, or I should say cold weather stuff, warm clothes on a cold weather night. They've got all that for you there as well at the UGA Bookstore. Find them online, UGABookstore.com. And don't forget, huge slate of autograph guests next Saturday as well. We'll tell you more about that throughout our program too. But for now, I also want to honor our player of the game here, presented by Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys, and it's going to go to Georgia running back Kenny McIntosh. McIntosh has a big night here statistically, but the most important thing, Terrence, that I believe that McIntosh did for Georgia after the bad Bennett interception, in which it seemed like momentum was once again up for grabs, when Georgia got that football back, they go on a very, very tough drive. McIntosh was a huge part of that drive, ultimately resulting in the touchdown. And that was a major answer to what had been an opportunity for Kentucky to really get back in this football game. Big moment for McIntosh there, and maybe, Terrence, the single most, I guess, crystallizing, example of how big he was in this game here this evening.
Yes, you got to give him credit. This is his first 100-yard rushing game as a Georgia Bulldog, and he ran hard, man. We know he has this cutting ability that's uncanny, but he does run behind his pass very well. He'll accelerate through the cuts. His jump cut is very elite. So, very impressed with this young man. He was a situational running back the past few years. Now he's the lead back, and he's done very well this season. I'm very happy that he stuck it out. He could have probably transferred and been a lead back before, but he stuck it out. He accepted his role, and now he's the go-to guy. So perseverance for those guys, and a lot of guys need to look at that. Like, the grass is not always greener. He did his job, and 150 plus yards tonight. Congratulations to that young man.
And great stat, Terrence. I didn't realize that. First 100-yard game in a Georgia Bulldogs uniform for McIntosh. That's a great thing to know, and I appreciate you sharing that with us on the show. And that's one of the reasons why he is the player of the game, presented by Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys. And if you're in the Atlanta area, you know this. Atlanta can happen out of nowhere. You're driving around, and boom, something happens to you. Well, if you get hurt or injured in an accident, you want to be made whole. You want to be made right. And that's what our friends at Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys can do for you. They know that in our town, the streets can be unpredictable, and you need a personal injury attorney that understands how to handle your case and all the things that go through that, and a lawyer you can trust to be by your side with all of what's going on in a situation like that. And that's what our friends at Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys are all about. You can find them online at atlantahappens.com. We love that URL, atlantahappens.com. You can also give them a call, 888-838-YOU-WIN. That's 888-838-YOU-WIN. We appreciate our friends at Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys being a part of our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. So we will get back to your calls here. Go ahead and join us via Zoom, and we'll have your thoughts, and you can share what you thought about the Georgia Bulldogs tonight getting that 16-6 win here over the Kentucky Wildcats. We also have a note here today that all four of the top four teams led by single digits in the second half today. That's Georgia, obviously, against Kentucky. TCU, which once again won by just a skinny little point against Baylor here, but they do remain undefeated. Obviously, Michigan was in a hard-fought battle against Illinois, and Ohio State, currently had been battling Maryland. We'll check in on that score here coming up in a moment. So this is not a great day to be one of those top-ranked teams. And don't you know, if you're a team like Tennessee right now, who's just on the outside looking in when it comes to, some of this, don't you know they had to be living and dying with every play of what was happening for TCU, and obviously doing the same thing a little bit later on for USC there as well. Don't you know they were all on that today, knowing that they get a chance to creep closer to the playoffs if something happens with one of those top four teams. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, Michigan, TCU not quite cooperating. We'll see what happens with USC there as well. All right, I'm going to read some comments the traditional way here on our Dog Nation YouTube page. ABC Chiropractic also reminding us the Gators got smacked around today by Vanderbilt. And Terrence, how about that? How about the idea, first of all, on the Vanderbilt side of things, winning SEC games in consecutive weeks here? That's a remarkable feat for Clark Lee's team after how bad they had been in SEC play now for quite some time. And how about this for the end of the first season for the Billy Napier era there at Florida? This is obviously not the way in which they want to go into the offseason. Gators fans asking some tough questions right now. This is a Florida team that did not look good in Nashville today.
Yes, I want to give a big shout out to my man Mike Wright, the Vanderbilt starting quarterback. I've known the young man for several years now. He's been a part of my group sometimes of when we train, and he's coming in. I've always challenged him in throwing contests when we did do some work together. So Vanderbilt winning 2 consecutive SEC games versus Kentucky and Florida. That is that is very big for that program, and it seems like the coaching staff there, the new coach, he's the alum. He has that team in the right direction. In the right direction is just believing. Once you get these kids to believe, they're due and play even above their ability. So congratulations to Vanderbilt, and it's always good to see them Gators lose, especially to a inferior opponent.
No doubt that's the case. Frank Patterson asked an important question. I want to make sure we get all of these details into our show. He asked about Tate Ratledge. So here's the story as I understand it on Ratledge. Ratledge did travel with the team here to Lexington, Kentucky today, was dressed, but was not spotted going through pregame warm-up. So he was here. He was a part of the travel roster for UGA, but not going through those warm-ups prior to the game. Devin Willock started in his place today, and I don't believe that Ratledge ever came in at all there. So we'll hope to hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart at some point in time before our show is done. Maybe he'll give us a little bit of an update on what it was that allowed Ratledge to travel but prevented him from playing here today. There was also a moment, Terrence, in which Broderick Jones briefly left the game. It seems like he was kind of hobbled there for a moment. He stepped off, and Amarius Mims stepped into the game, but that was short-lived. Jones was back in there, I think, shortly after that. But in the case of Tate Ratledge, he was here but not warming up. Willock started for him, and that would appear to be a little bit of an injury story. And any injury as you get late in the season like this, they all start to really matter here right now.
Most definitely. That's why you recruit, because if injuries do pile up throughout the season and one man goes down, you have quality depth to come in and you're a backup for a reason, not starting, but you go in and do the best that you're able to do, and that best is not a glaring need. So I'm lucky that Kirby have recruited, especially on the O-line as well as he has. If Project Jones goes down, Amarius Sims can go right in and step into that position. That's one of the things that Kirby has done throughout his time is build depth, and he shows now once a player goes down, the next one just steps right in.
So Frank also mentioned he doesn't feel like the offensive line functions well when Ratledge is not in there. And, listen, I won't pretend to, have watched every single snap those guys took today closely and evaluating from a, film watching standpoint necessarily. But I think I saw some stuff that I did like from Willock a bit here today. And to be frank, that some of the short yardage issues that Georgia had against Kentucky were not all that different than some of the goal line situations last week against Mississippi State. That, the overall kind of short yardage success rate for Georgia is probably not, even though the offensive line performance this season I think has been pretty good, certainly more good than not. The short yardage stuff was also a little bit of an issue last week against Mississippi State there as well. So I don't know that I have much of a problem with Willock in the game for Georgia. I think I certainly understand why Frank likes Tate Ratledge, of course, but Georgia had some short yardage issues last week against Mississippi State, especially down there in the red zone. Did you notice Willock one way or another today, Terrence? Any evaluation on what Devin was providing?
I just think overall from the 20 to the 20, we ran the ball well. We opened holes, so I had no issue with offensive line until we got into the short yardage goal line situation. So a lot of that can also help with the play calling. If our strength is not inside because Tate Rutledge is out, then you'll be able to run more of the outside zone like I've talked about throughout this whole program. So once you have backups in, it's up to the coaches to put those guys in position to succeed. And right today, the last few weeks, our inside running game has not been our better choice of running. It's always been more counters or zones.
We've reached the portion of the show, by the way, where my hands are frozen. Terrence, last week, I know you were you're coaching last week with Milton, but we've sort of reached the portion of the show where I can't scroll through my phone and find comments and read our callers or anything like that. So in a minute, we're going to push on here for a few more minutes, but once my hands go numb and I can't move my fingers anymore, things get a little bit tougher to do here. Miriam Corbin watching Tennessee right now against South Carolina. So we'll check in on some of these scores here in a moment and try to give you some of those before it's all said and done. But apparently she's not seeing a lot that she maybe Tennessee fans not super happy right now with what's going on there against South Carolina. Melinda Moe also in today's win saying, this is on Facebook, "I'll take it cold, windy, go Dogs." And Terrence, there is something to be said here. And I know this sounds like sugarcoating, and I guess I'm careful not to want to do that, but there's also an element of which I think it kind of is also the true. There was something about surviving and advancing. There's something about winning a game ugly. There's something about, not having to apologize for getting a W. And I'm not saying a win is always a win. Some people kind of want to make it sound like, hey, you never have to worry about how you win. Well, if you're Tennessee, you do have to worry about how you win. You have to try to impress the committee because you couldn't handle your business when you came into Athens the other day. If you're, I don't know, the loser of the Michigan-Ohio State game, they better hope they had some impressive performances throughout the season. But if you're Georgia at this point in the season, you have earned the right to say a win as a win. And this wasn't perfect. No, this wasn't, great necessarily for Georgia, but certainly it was a win, and it was freezing cold. And Georgia can go inside, get warm, get ready to fly back home, and get ready to do it for clean old-fashioned hate next Saturday night, or next Saturday afternoon, I should say. So I think that Melinda's kind of right about this. When you think about everything that was going for this game here today, just getting out of Dodge and getting back home is probably not the worst thing.
Oh, most definitely. I was looking at Florida numbers today. Offensively, they put up a lot of numbers against Vanderbilt and end up losing. So if we could go in and win some games ugly, I'll take them. We didn't play our best tonight, and that's fine. But the objective is to win, continue to move on. Injury-free is probably the best thing that happened to us tonight. None of our key players didn't get injured tonight, seriously. I'm sure there's bumps and bruises. But at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. And Georgia came out in this type of atmosphere, weather-wise, and ended up with a victory. Now we can get back on the plane and get ready for the school up the road, the technical college up the road.
I love that, Terrence, for sure. By the way, Matt Rukavina said I'm about 3 miles from his dad. I should go get a bourbon and sit by the fire. Listen, man, that sounds pretty incredible right now. That sounds very good indeed. I believe we are going to get a chance to hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart here coming up in just a moment. Looking forward to finding out some of what he had to say about tonight's game. When I get the thumbs up that Kirby's ready to go for us, we'll go ahead and let you hear some of that tonight. Maybe he'll give us an update on Tate Ratledge and talk about his perception of how Georgia performed tonight in the cold. And Terrence, while we're waiting on that to hear from Kirby here, let's go back to your senior year for a moment. That was obviously a dominant win for Georgia against Georgia Tech. Think about that, 52-7, I believe the final score was in Athens. One of the rare times which it was actually a night game for Georgia and Georgia Tech that particular season. But you obviously understand what it's like to get that win against the in-state rival. You would also have been a part of a win there in 2001, which actually broke a streak. Unfortunately, in 98, 99, 2000, Tech actually had a 3-game winning streak against UGA back then, and you were part of the Georgia teams that kind of helped correct the record on that and build its own winning streak, which I think eventually stretched, 7 games, I guess, from 2001 through 2007 on that. So if anybody understands the importance of clean old-fashioned hate, and if anybody understands how nice it is to have that game back between the hedges again after it's been a long time since Georgia's played Georgia Tech there in Athens, I'm sure you would. What does the in-state rivalry mean to you?
It's big. It's big. We always use the slogan that Tyler Simmons was onside. I can tell you this, Jasper Saints did not fumble that ball in 1999 against Georgia Tech. And that kind of started the 3-game losing streak against Georgia Tech. But this is a rivalry that you can't lose. You can't lose because those guys that you have known for a long time. I played against my first cousin who played at Tech. So it is deep family ties for me with this game. And, we've dominated Georgia Tech the last 15 years, and we're going to continue to do that. And I love being able to troll some of the Georgia Tech people that I know personally. Now they can't use the 1980 slogan anymore, so they don't really have too much to say about us now. So I can't wait to that 12 o'clock game, and we know what the outcome is going to be.
All right, that's good stuff, and we'll hear more from Terrence Edwards here in a moment. Also, Georgia coach Kirby Smart, a couple of minutes ago, his post-game press conference, his thoughts on some of the game here. You can obviously watch the press conference in its entirety on the Dog Nation YouTube page, but for now, a little bit from Kirby Smart from moments ago on the win against Kentucky. Here's Kirby. A little bit of an issue there with the Kirby Smart audio on that. I don't know if we're gonna be able to play that for you here today. So you can obviously watch the entirety of the press conference there on the Dog Nation YouTube page. You can check that out there, but we may have a little bit of an issue for you on that here right now. So we'll instead take a couple more comments here and get ready to wrap up. We'll also take a look at some of these scores here throughout the SEC there, as well as the wind is really whipping here at Commonwealth Stadium, Kroger Field. I am ready to go back home. My body's not made for all of this, not by a long shot. And in fact, this is one of those moments which I wish I was one of those Royal Caribbean cruise ships. That's exactly where I wish I was right now. And speaking of Royal Caribbean, seems like as good a time as any to get ready to go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And we'll see if I can this is going to be tricky to see if I can get some of these scores going when I can't even hardly move my thumb here right now because it's so windy. But let's talk about some of what we saw today here. Terrence, obviously interesting day around the SEC. Obviously Alabama had its struggles there for a bit. You got Tennessee and South Carolina battling right now. Obviously it's kind of that calm before the storm here when you think about sort of the I guess the kind of precursor to Rivalry Week. You certainly saw some interesting games across the SEC here today, and a lot of those are still ongoing right now.
Yeah, so, BA, I'm here in the comfort of my home, so I can give you some of these scores. South Carolina's up on Tennessee right now, 21-7. So that's probably
that would be great, Terrence. Thank you. Did you say 21-7?
21-7 right now.
21-7.
South Carolina just scored again, 21-7. South Carolina's up right now.
Wow.
So that's right now. South Carolina is moving the ball up and down the field. Tennessee scored in their first possession in like 3 plays and haven't done anything since. So South Carolina's up 21-7 right now.
Unbelievable. And it just adds to what, shocking outcomes. I don't think anybody would have seen Vanderbilt over Florida today. That was obviously a shocking outcome. This, at least as it stands right now, Tennessee's got the firepower on offense to obviously respond back to this. But as it stands right now, this is certainly a surprising early score. How about Auburn, Western Kentucky? Terrence, what was the final there with Auburn and Western Kentucky? Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, Auburn won 41-17. But the shocker to me of the day is, and I know they have been playing terrible this year, Texas A&M only beat UMass 20-3. So I don't know what's going on there. The fans cleared the stadium out today. I don't know if you've seen those pictures on Twitter going around. But Texas A&M only won 20-3.
Yeah, so that is a surprise, and I think you're left to wonder what that means for the future here of Jimbo Fisher. And listen, you're talking about an $89 million buyout. I certainly don't know if you're able to move off that here in just 1 year. But certainly, that's going to be a very strange offseason there in College Station where, unfortunately, they just can't score points. And UMass is literally, of the 131 teams to play FBS college football, UMass is literally one of the very worst. And yet another day in which the Aggies offense really has nothing to show for it. A tough time to be a Texas A&M fan. And if you're trying to sell the future of Jimbo Fisher there with that program, a tough time to be able to do that as well.
Oh, most definitely. It's funny. Jimbo recruited me coming out of high school, so I know Jimbo very well, and I know Coach Cooley very well. So I know those guys it's just not going well this year. And $87 million is a huge buyout. So I don't know. I know Texas A&M got deep pockets, but I don't know if they're that deep to pay a man $87 million to go away. So their struggles continue, and it's unfortunate. But for whatever reason, it's just not going well over there right now.
And that is our cruise around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean, obviously looking at all the scores across college football and continuing to watch the other games with playoff implications there as well. Obviously, we told you earlier, TCU, they do slip past Baylor today. They remain undefeated. Michigan was in a tough, hard-fought battle against Illinois, but the Wolverines remain undefeated and obviously setting up big rivalry games in the SEC next week. And the final regular season Saturday, as well as more of these playoff positions will be jockeyed for, and we're following all of that. And certainly we wish we were all on Royal Caribbean cruise ships here right now. In fact, if you want to join us for our second ever cruise with Dog Nation coming up in April, you've got a great chance to do that. Our good friend Jessica Slater is a great travel agent, and she's put a great website together to give you all you need to know about Independence of the Seas coming up in April. It's called RoyalDogs.com. That's the website. If you go to RoyalDogs.com, you can learn all about the special events involving Dog Nation, also the great entertainment options, the dining options, all the fun that comes with Independence of the Seas, and the great way in which Royal Caribbean kind of redefines and sets the standard so high for the cruise vacations. I certainly love Royal Caribbean cruises. I'm looking forward to a handful of cruises coming up here over the course of the next few months, but obviously looking forward to being with all of you on the Dog Nation cruise coming up in April. Going to be so much fun. Can't wait to see you all for it. You can also give Jessica a call at the number you see on your screen, and she'll tell you all the details you need to know about the Dog Nation cruise, and she can also tell you about Icon of the Seas, the brand new Royal Caribbean cruise ship debuting in January of 2024. Once again, taking a new step forward towards making cruise vacations more fun than they've ever been. That is what Royal Caribbean is all about. Now, here's what we're all about. We do now have our audio issues corrected here when it comes to the Kirby Smart press conference. So I want to give you a chance to hear a little bit of what Kirby had to say a little earlier here on the win against Kentucky, the weather conditions, maybe some injury stuff here too. Let's see what we can get from Kirby here right now as a part of our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore.
Composure and kind of toughness they showed. We knew it would be this kind of game. We talked about it all week. We actually showed clips from the last time we came up here in terms of the number of snaps played and the shrinking of the game, which I think is really smart by Mark, and keeping the game tight and lowering the number of possessions. With the weather conditions, you're going to play these kind of games like this, and they're really proud of when our guys' backs are against the wall, how they come out fighting and what they do. Certainly could have played better probably in the red area. Could have stopped some drives defensively. We gave them a couple conversions on penalties and things, but I give Kentucky a lot of credit for bounce back, being a really physical football team, and we won the line of scrimmage tonight, which we had to do. So with that, I'll open it up.
Coach, what's the message when they are limiting possessions like that to your offense? Not to press, maybe just do what we do? I mean,
we knew it was going to be that. We had 3 possessions in the first half. I don't think they had but 3. And we talked about, limiting the number of plays we would carry, get really good at what we do, be efficient. The efficiency was there, other than the red area, and it was tough in the red area. They do a good job. They jam-pack you down there. They don't pressure a lot. They have lots of levels in their defense, and our probably inability to run it in the red area hurt us more than anything. But it gave Pod a chance to be clutch, and he was. Those are not easy kicks when you got 16, 17 mile an hour winds blowing around.
And that was red area was a problem all night. Why wouldn't you take the points there on the last possession when you got 4th and goal?
Because I feel like to win a game, you need to be able to run it in for 4th and 1. And if you don't get it, they got to go 99 yards. Those are decisions I get to make.
Would you say to Kenny to get his first career 100-yard rushing?
Awesome. Kenny ran the ball really well tonight. Physical, tucked the ball up. I thought the offensive line was really physical. Did a good job in the run game to be able to get the ball out of there a couple times. And, for him to hit 140, whatever he hit, 143, it's awesome for him. Probably could have had more. He shared the load with some other guys, and Kendall did a good job when he came in. I thought all those guys ran the ball well.
I know there's more ball to be played, but how's it feel to be 8-0 in the SEC back-to-back years for this team?
Hard to do. Last 40 years, there's only been 2. And it's hard to win on the road in the SEC. You look across the country today, you see the environments people were playing in. You see it's different. You find out real quick who really wants to play football and who's just a football fan. And you have to be able to win in games like that, especially in November.
Kirby, 2 Kentucky drives there late where they really needed points. You guys don't give up any on those 2 drives. Just what did you see from the defense in those moments?
Well, it was bend but don't break. We didn't stop them. They ended up getting down to the red area. The wins on 4th down were the difference in the game. And our ability to stop them on 4th down was big, but our inability on some of the 3rd downs to get off the field hurt us some. Our offense was, I think, 6 or 12 on 3rd down, so they continue to be one of the most efficient.
All right, so a little bit from Kirby Smart there. You can watch the entirety of the Dog Nation press conference coverage with Kirby Smart on the Dog Nation YouTube page. You can see that there. And, Terrence, one of the things we heard from Kirby a moment ago, I like the word clutch as it relates to Jack Podlesny. And, listen, I think that – Georgia fans obviously don't like settling for field goals. We mentioned this earlier in the show today. They don't like settling for field goals, but you needed the points that Podlesny provided you here. And having a good, dependable kicker is obviously a big part of a championship pursuit. And he has become and has been certainly a reliable weapon for UGA. So we obviously honored Kenny McIntosh as our player of the game earlier tonight. But I think when you think about key contributors to this win, I definitely think that you have to think about Podlesny as one of those guys, and nice to hear Kirby Smart certainly giving him some credit for that here a moment ago.
Oh, most definitely, man. When you get an opportunity to kick in this type of weather and you nail them, if they was not even close to missing, he had his stroke going tonight. So that was good to see that he could kick in the elements. If we ever had a game that the elements wasn't the best, that he's a reliable kicker, and the team can trust him on making kicks in the elements of the win. So that was good on his part. So I know Kenny McIntosh got the game ball tonight, but for me, Podlesny would have got the game ball because kicking in these elements was not easy.
How about a final thought from you, Terrence? Where does Georgia go from here? Anything that we haven't mentioned tonight that you want to make mention of? I think it's also, important to probably give another shout out to this Georgia defense who once again comes out here and holds an opponent in SEC play to under 10 points. That's really one of the ways in which, Georgia was never really all that much danger of losing. You were kind of worried with the game get closer and give Kentucky a chance, but they were never really in all that much danger of losing because, once again, you got a high-level performance from your defense overall. So I'll give them a shout-out there as well. Any final thought from you on that? And then we'll take a couple of callers here, too, and get ready to wrap up the show. Terrence, any final thought from you before we go back to the phone calls for one final moment here?
Yeah, it's just the way the defense played tonight. Like Kirby said, they did move the ball, but once the defense needed to really bow up and stop them, we did. The pick by Keeley was big. The fourth down stop was big. And, we got so many young guys playing. The sack got taken away from Mikael Williams, but that was a big sack on his part. So I'm looking for another guy. I can't wait till he get his opportunity. Maybe it's going to be next year. Is Marvin Jones Jr., another elite pass rusher.
Yeah.
And with Nolan now, we don't have that name guy yet, but I'm really looking for maybe it's going to be next year that Marvin Jones Jr. takes the Nolan Smith position and become that pass rusher that we need from the outside linebacker position.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt when you think about, what Georgia's still pursuing for its class of 2023 and young guys like Marvin Jones Jr., obviously in his first year with the program, that when you start thinking about, hey, what does the future look like for Georgia football? What does 2023 on the field look like? And when you start thinking about the future of a Georgia defense, which obviously we believe is very bright, cultivating what you have at the edge rusher position, I think that's going to be really important. And obviously we understand why Jones was such a highly regarded recruit, and getting a chance to see more of him is certainly something that Georgia fans want to see. And it's also one of those things when you think about, the way in which they're going after Samuel Mpemba or Damon Wilson, that Georgia's continuing to recruit and really chase after those elite edge players too on the list of positions that you kind of always have to have in the modern game. And for Georgia, this is going to be definitely true going forward. Got to have that elite, dominant edge player. And I would say that on the current roster, Jones certainly has a chance to be one of those in the future. And Georgia seems to be also in pursuit of those guys in the 2023 class here as well.
Yes, I will put out a prediction. If an elite pass rusher comes into the portal, I guarantee you, I know what Kirby said about the portal last week, but if an elite rusher comes in the portal, we have to try to get that type player at Georgia. We will always have the interior. Coach Scott and company have done a great job of developing and signing D tackles. I know we have two big ones in the 23 class, but to be a dominant team, you definitely need that Will Anderson, Nolan Smith edge rusher that just can destroy games just from their presence alone. So that's one that I'm going to be looking for in the spring. See who develops and take Nolan Smith's spot, because you definitely need a pass rusher
guy that can dominate games on the edge. We have the guys in the interior. Now we just need to develop some guys on the outside.
Final caller of the night going to be Johnny Prescott. Johnny, how about them Dogs? Georgia gets the win, 16-6. What'd you think about UGA here this evening? All right, apparently our caller dropped there, so we'll let him go, and that's probably a cue for me to go ahead and try to get warm and get indoors here. So let's get ready to wrap up. Terrence, great stuff as always. We certainly appreciate that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and certainly we'll look forward to seeing you again. Obviously, as we bring the show back to Athens next week, Georgia returning home to take on Georgia Tech next week. Looking forward to that. And, of course, we'll catch up with the Young Dog Nation Daily throughout the week there as well. Thanks for your time here tonight, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. And you go get a cup of coffee, cup of cocoa, or something to warm up.
Oh, I'm going to get a cup of something. I can promise you that. And to everybody else who is joining us here on this Dog Nation post-game show, we appreciate you being on hand there as well. Georgia gets the win, going to get a chance to stay on top of the college football world, and the mission of, even with the gloves on, I can still do the two fingers, go for 2 in 22. It is still a mission that is just as alive as ever. We got huge events coming up in the coming days. Obviously looking forward to a couple of Wednesdays from now, being back at the Marlows in Brookhaven. We're very excited about that. We're excited about our Dog Nation Go for 2 in 22 tailgate that's going to be taking place, kicking off the entire Go for 2 in 22 season prior to the SEC Championship. If you go to dognation.com, you can learn more about that. It's going to be an exciting next few weeks here around Dog Nation. We believe it's going to result in a second consecutive national championship for UGA, and every game from here on out is going to be way warmer, at least we hope, in Athens next week. But certainly all the games beyond that, way warmer than what this one was here tonight. So we're excited about all the fun things coming up at Dog Nation. Excited about having all of you with us for it all as we roll through it. Go for 2 in 22. What a special time that's going to be. And as always, thank you for joining us here on our Dog Nation post-game show. We know you got a lot of things you could be doing on a Saturday night after having watched the Georgia games. The fact that you tune in and you participate in all of this with us, we are incredibly, incredibly thankful for all of that. So all of you, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hopefully you're staying warm wherever you are, and we'll see you again here next time on our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. We'll talk to you then, everybody.